I'd like to welcome you all to our Tepper Alumni webinar series. Today's topic is current job market trends and return to the office, and we're so glad to have so many alumni from all over joining us for today. And very excited to have back with us our Tepper Executive Alumni Career Coach, Julie Thornton. And today she's being joined by two of our outstanding alumni who are leaders in the human resource field to be able to share their insights as well. So we're glad to have you with us as part of our lifelong learning opportunities here at the Tepper School, and welcome back to our virtual classroom. Before we begin, let me share a couple of good announcements. First, we have our Tepper 2022 Alumni Award nominations are open, so we'd like to encourage you to, if you haven't done one yet, to submit a nomination for an alumni either for achievement or for service. For recent alumni or our senior lifelong alumni, we'd love to have your nominations. They're going to be open through December, so we encourage you to start now thinking about your nominations. We also have our next webinar. I want you to mark your calendars for December 16th. We've got one of our professors, Catherine Shea, who's going to talk about why your biggest cheerleader may not be the best mentor, insights on mentorship. So for all of you who are thinking about serving as mentors or looking for mentors in your career, you want to catch that one with Catherine Shea next month. We also want you to know that November 30th is Giving CMU Day, and we would love to have your support for Carnegie Mellon University and for the Tepper School. We have a $50,000 challenge from one of our alumni board members, Bruce Gephardt, and we hope that you'll take advantage of that. You'll be hearing from us, but we hope that you'll be thinking about us and making a gift on November 30th. We do want you to save the date also for Reunion 2022. After 2 years of virtual reunions, we're looking forward to in-person, on-campus reunions. We split it into 2 reunion weekends this year, one for our one-year reunion classes from 2020 and 2021. And then for all the other classes, we've changed our date to May 20th to 21st. So if you've got a 1, a 2, a 6, or a 7 in your graduation year, you have a reunion coming up. I actually was just on one of our reunion committee calls right before this call. So the committees are hard at work. If you'd like to join your class committee, we'd love to have more volunteers for that as well. So Reunion 2022, looking forward to seeing all of you on campus again. Well, today's speaker is Julie Thornton. It's been an honor to have Julie as part of our team. She spent over 20 years in corporate human resources, executive search, and executive coaching in a number of U.S. markets. We're so glad to have her here in Pittsburgh for that. And she's been our executive alumni coach, bringing her business acumen to and coaching expertise to our alumni, and had the chance to see it firsthand, the impact that she's able to have on our alumni. Some who are recent graduates, but others who are more senior graduates, so changing their career, looking at transitions, and also for those looking for advice on their corporate challenges that they're facing. Julie also works with our private clients who find themselves in career transition or navigating the challenges in their team. So let me once again join me in welcoming Julie Thornton to our team. Julie?
Great. Thanks, John. It's great to be here with you all today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're sitting. I'm really excited today that I am joined by 2 panelists, and we're hoping to make today a little bit more of a discussion. We have 2 panelists today, Julie Murphy and Andrea Shai, who are both Tepper alumni. If they could join me here. I think I'm only looking at John at the moment. There's Andrea. Andrea is the head of talent strategy and transformation at Eightfold. And Andrea, if you wouldn't mind just giving a little introduction of yourself.
Sure. It's great to be here. I'm really excited to be talking to fellow alumni. So I graduated undergraduate with an IM degree, liked it so much, I came back to get my master's. And so excited to be a double alumni from Tepper. And my background is I've had several different roles, but has spent the past 25 years in American Express in a variety of roles. I pretty much worked in every business unit, everything from managing top accounts, managing the Platinum and Centurion card. I even managed payroll for a period of time. And my latest role was heading up the global talent acquisition organization, American Express. While I was in that role, I launched a transformation. And one of the things that I implemented was an AI solution related to talent named Eightfold. I found the solution so strong in terms of how it impacted our strategy and our results that I ended up leaving and joining Eightfold about 4 months ago. And so now I'm the head of talent strategy and transformation, where my role is really to work with other senior talent leaders and helping them, really think through transformation, how AI fits into that. So I definitely had a big change in my career. Julie, I probably could have talked to you last year, but I changed from, joining a very senior role in a Fortune 100 company, running an organization that was 500 or more people, to joining a fast-growing startup, which is actually smaller than my organization size. What I can say is I love the change, and I'm really enjoying my new role. So that's me, and I guess I'll hand it over to Julie Murphy.
Oh, thanks, Andrea. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Murphy, and I am delighted to be here today. I am currently the head of human resources for ANSYS, which is a global leader in simulation software. ANSYS is an S&P 500 NASDAQ 100 company. So it's a very exciting time to be at ANSYS. We're on a significant growth trajectory. And what's most near and dear to me about the role that I play at ANSYS is we are a people-denominated business. We're all about people. We don't have factories or distribution centers or coal mines or rail yards. It's all people all the time. So my role is to manage all facets of the employee life cycle, from attracting, developing, retaining, and engaging the highest caliber talent on the planet. Prior to ANSYS, I started my career in HR quite by accident. After I have an engineering undergraduate degree and got my MBA at Carnegie Mellon. And after my MBA, I started in Big Four consulting. And it was quickly becoming evident to me that no matter how technically elegant a solution is coming out of the consulting mindset, unless you address the people issues, it's really not going to get off the ground. So I made a concerted effort to focus on the people side of change, and that has led me to where I am now. So I'll turn it back to Julie Thornton or Andrea maybe to take us through a couple of slides that I know she's prepared for the audience today.
Yeah, that sounds great. And as you can see, Julie and I actually graduated in the same year, except she took the harder route where she worked at the same time she was in school. So kudos to you, Julie.
Well, our paths didn't cross that much, but it's so fun to be reconnected this way. So and it's all happening virtually. So I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we want to, Janice, if we want to go on to the next page, but I thought I'd just spend 5 minutes on, obviously we're data people coming out of Tepper. I thought I'd just share some data on the macro environment right now related to jobs and workers. And this is information that's just been released in the past 3-4 weeks. And some of it was just actually released last week from JOLTS. So this is US data. And I think what we've all heard about is something called the Great Resignation. I like the term the Great Reassessment because that tells you a little bit more about what's actually happening in people's minds, in the minds of many of the workers. And what the Great Reassessment is that people are really thinking about their work. They're looking at relocating as we have gone through the pandemic, working remotely, spending more time, having more time to spend with their family, more flexibility, and even more meaningful career paths. And then you can see some of the data behind that, right, with resignations being up and continuing to grow. Retirement during the pandemic was expected to be about a million people retiring. It turns out that there were 3.6 million, or over 2 million more than expected that decided to retire during the pandemic. And then finally, you're also seeing a lot of people starting to start their own businesses. There's business applications are really also jumping up. And so it's an interesting time because there's a lot of jobs available. There are a lot of people resigning, but somehow there's a little bit of a mismatch between the industries that are looking for workers and the workers that are available. So this is some of the data that was released. If we can go on to the next page. So I found this is just really a fascinating chart. What you see is, this is all the different recessions that have happened over the years. And what's really interesting is if you take a look at the most recent recession, and I think we all lived this. I definitely lived this. This was a bit painful. But you can see back in kind of that March, April timeframe, the jobs that were available in employment declined pretty dramatically in a very short period of time. And then what you can see is the rebound pivoted very quickly. I think by January, I was in my global talent acquisition role. We thought that we were going to see a slow ramp up of jobs, but it came out of the gates fast and furiously with pent up demand. And you can see that ramp up where we're very quickly within a 9-month window, ramping up almost back to where we were. So you can see that timeline is pretty dramatic. And it's really interesting for those that are practitioners. It's been a crazy time. Companies are really trying to figure out how to manage through all this. It's very different than the other recessions that we've seen. You go on to the next page. So this data was actually just released last week. And what you can see is that the number of workers that are quitting their jobs in the most recent data available, which is September, just released last week, is continuing to go up. There were 4.4 million workers who quit their jobs. That's a 3% rate in the month of September. The other things I found interesting was taking a look at some of the regional data, the rates by the different regions of the country in the U.S. You can see that in the Northeast, it's a lower rate, which is surprising. It doesn't feel that way for those of us that are in the Northeast. And then you can see the quit rates are across many industries, a broad range of industries that are high quit rates. If we continue to go on to the next page, I just want to show, too, from the standpoint of jobs, for those of us that are, in the workforce and some that might be looking for jobs, there's plentiful jobs that are available. You can see the rate of job openings, the rate at which they're being posted is at a record high. So it's a workers' economy. Employers are, doing things like offering bonuses at a rate that's higher. It actually has doubled since the start of this year. So that's the level of competition that we're seeing. And I think, Julie Murphy, as you were saying, I think things are still emerging right now. Everyone's trying to figure out how to manage through this. What are workers expecting? And how do you, drive engagement so that you can kind of have the ability to retain and engage your employees? So a lot that's going on. I think from my perspective, I spend a lot of time talking to different leaders across industries in my current role at Eightfold. And so there's a lot of pressure that leaders are facing right now. And part of what I'm seeing as part of an AI solution for talent is that we're growing really quickly because I think companies are realizing there's a need for change. And this is one of the solutions that, drives a true, very deep change. So a lot happening, in this current environment. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Julie to take us through more of a conversation on this.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. Those are just really some great data points that certainly tee us up for this discussion. And I will just say that, I feel like I'm living all of those charts and graphs in coaching. I feel like both with my corporate clients and doing leadership coaching, as well as transition clients within Tepper, I can attest to every single one of those data points and say that it's all happening and it's continuously changing as recent as, a week ago and a month ago. And I have clients ask me every day, well, what do you think is going to happen next month? And I keep saying, I'm not sure I know what's going to happen next week, because it just continually, it keeps shifting. And so, we are currently living in the midst of it as it's still moving. So let's move into current job market trends. We're going to work through a couple discussion points here. And again, just relating back to the data that you just shared, which is so timely and useful in this discussion. The first being, and you touched on this, just creative retention tools. I'm gonna go on a limb and say that this is sort of the Julie Thornton summary of like what is keeping people. And I think it's flexibility. I think flexibility has moved itself to the top of this list. And what is currently retaining employees, and as well as what is attracting talent. I do see, again, corporate clients of mine having a lot of trouble retaining people. As well as how do we attract people if we're requiring X, Y, or Z as far as just, back to office situations. So Julie Murphy, can you speak to this at all, sitting in kind of from an HR perspective?
Yes. So two things that I'd like to share. First is, to your point on flexibility as a retention tool. Unfortunately, or fortunately, increased flexibility is now table stakes. Coming out of COVID, it is just an expectation. So that's a good thing for my company, because we are offering flexibility. It's a bad thing for my company because every other company is offering flexibility. So that alone is not enough. So I'll get real specific about what we're doing for retention, and that is kind of two key things, and this is born out of our recent exit survey data. What matters most to our high-value employees that are leaving is career path and compensation. And that kind of goes against conventional wisdom, especially those of us in HR. We always say it's never about compensation; it's always something more. Well, I'm telling you, in my world of software, where equity ownership can tend to run pretty deep into the organization, wealth creation and compensation are key drivers for retention. So extending, looking at creative vesting periods for equity compensation, and rethinking, the equity pools that we have. In fact, we're going through that process now as part of our annual review, and we're looking very creatively about how do we extend equity, how do we leverage equity, because equity is it's a beautiful thing because it drives deep sense of ownership in the company. Going back to career path, we're investing in some very specific tools and technology to launch more systemic career pathing over the next 6 to 12 months. So we are a technology company. We've recently implemented a wall-to-wall HRIS global. It covers the globe and it covers every facet of HR. And so we're bolting on some career pathing tools as part of that suite of offerings. So those would be the two key levers that we're, in addition to flexibility. So I guess that's a third. We are finding that some organizations that are asking their employees to go back to work, go back to the office, a certain number of days are those that kind of lead employees to go through the reassessment that Andrea mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yeah, that's great. I would agree with all that. Even from a coaching perspective, I think 2020 was kind of the year where everyone thought about their careers and what is my path, and am I okay with the path I was on? And I have all this idle time to sit and think about it at home. And so I think offering that career pathing option is certainly has increased the importance of it. Andrea, anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think everything Julie just shared is spot on. That flexibility. I think part of what I'm seeing too, as I talk to a lot of the large companies across industries, is that people really want to continue to develop their skills. right, in their careers. And so that's a really important element. Like people are making changes because they want to have the opportunity to continue to build their skill set quickly. And so one of the things that we're finding with a lot of our customers is, they're rolling out our AI so that their employees can see, the different roles across the company. They can be very transparent. They can understand the skills required for those roles, and they can understand how they match to those skills and what they need to develop to move in the direction they'd like to go. So that becomes like empowering to employees. It empowers them to kind of develop their learning plan to align with their career, objectives. And empowering them is really important. Giving them that transparency we're hearing is really important, because otherwise it's kind of based on the network that and the roles that about. And so I think that's a pretty dramatic change for most companies.
Absolutely. Yeah, all great points. The next one is remote work indefinite timeline. And by this, I mean, and I just spent yesterday on 3 different calls with clients who have said, initially September 1 back to office. Oh, wait, it's going to be November 1. Now I think I've got a couple January ones in the mix, but those are a little iffy. And, some companies even talking March 1, and then others saying, wait, do we actually have a date? Like, are we actually, calling a date out? So just recently has shifted to January and or March is what I'm seeing. And then I would say kind of that gray area of some companies that really don't have that defined yet. Either of you want to speak to that, Andrea or Julie?
So I would say we are very much experiencing the same thing. We have 5,100 employees globally, and our commitment to our employees is to give them a 30-day window, and that was kind of, so that they could prepare for the return to office. And we started that 30-day commitment to our employees way back, over a year ago. And what we found is we kept shifting the dates, and it's a lot of consternation in shifting those dates. So this last time, in early November, we did say, we are not establishing a new date to come back. We still will maintain our 30-day commitment, but we're on an indefinite timeline at this point. So we're very much like, I'm living bullet point 2.
Right.
I think the only other thing I would add to that, what I've also seen some companies doing, in addition to the timeline, they're actually structuring different models of work where, you work virtual 100%, you come in occasionally, or you come in 3 days a week. I'm not really hearing much about 5 days a week anymore. But even just setting up not just the timing when you come back, but when you do come back, a lot of different models are emerging based on kind of the requirements of the job. So again, we go back to flexibility, a lot of flexibility there, but also trying to ensure kind of for the business needs, you have the right working model.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say I too have not seen anyone who is committed to 5 days back. I haven't seen that yet. I have a couple clients who kind of attempted a hybrid model for about 3 or 4 weeks and then kind of left. So it was short-lived, but I would agree with all those as well. The next is, and you alluded to this certainly in the data points at the beginning, just the increase in salaries. And with this, I'm talking both offers. So someone looking externally as well as then counter offers. I mean, I think we're seeing, someone, I actually had a week back in September where I had 11, these numbers stick in my head because this has not happened in years. I had 11 client meetings, and 6 of those meetings, individuals had multiple offers. And so I was helping them kind of walk through and discern multiple offers. And oh, by the way, should I take the counter offer? So 6 out of 11 meetings in 1 week. I don't really remember. Quite honestly, it felt like the .com era to me a little bit when I was sitting in recruiting at a tech company. So yeah, I mean, Andrea's sitting in talent acquisition. Can you speak to that at all? Sort of what you're seeing?
Yeah, no, I think it's To be honest with you, I think it just kind of landed on the practitioners. Like all of a sudden, you had this huge demand to fill roles. The talent you wanted had multiple offers to consider, and even internally, managing your employees, getting offers also with more comp. I think one of the things I think companies are trying to be careful of is that you're not arbitraging within your own company, because that would kind of be a challenge. But I do think that's emerging, and companies are trying to deal with it as best as possible. I do think in the coming year, there's going to be more proactive efforts for that, because I think right now it's a little bit reactive, because it just kind of, as you saw in that chart, it just kind of came about in the past 7 months. And so I do think there's more that's going to happen that's going to be more proactive going forward.
Yeah, I think to help kind of counter offer some of this, certainly there will be a need for that. Absolutely. The next is just quick remote interview process. So I think what I saw when we first started this Zoom interview process, we were really, frankly, got used to Zoom and Teams and whatnot pretty quickly, in my opinion. And then all of a sudden, interview processes were, the market wasn't as hot. So certainly we were interviewing remotely. And now that the market's hot, I'm just seeing interview processes happen very quickly. So, an individual meets with, 15, 16 people over a 2-day period, and offers made by a Thursday. We need a decision by this date. And so I have seen an increase in just the shortness of the process, kind of beginning to, from applying to the position to offer in hand. And then again, potentially having multiple offers, multiple candidates, counter offer. It all seems to have, I'm sure there's maybe or maybe not data on this somewhere. There will be, what that kind of time to fill a position has been. So, Julie, do you have any thoughts around this as to what you're seeing?
I couldn't agree more with what you just described. I mean, we are compressing as many steps as possible to keep momentum on our side in the interview process. And we are, it has been an interesting journey. Like we first shut down for COVID, it was like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to offer jobs to people without meeting them in person? And now it's like, we don't need to meet people in person. We'll just go as fast as we can. But it has, we have balanced that with a much more detailed behavioral interview process. So while we're on the phone or on Zoom or Teams, we are going very deep, very quickly. There will often be 2 or 3 people on our side interviewing candidates in the session, more panel interviews, just to compress time and to improve the candidate experience as well. So we are we're moving very, speed is our friend.
Right. Julie, I like what you said earlier, where you said you were living bullet number 2. I feel like maybe we're living all of these bullets, right?
Yeah. There's another bullet too I'll add before you turn the page, but I'll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andrea, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, just listening to Julie talk, I think it's just an interesting inflection point for every company and every person out there, definitely for the company's perspective, because we're having to move quickly. Just out of necessity. We have so many roles to fill. And then we're actually figuring out, actually we can do this, and I think that's happening across many topics, whether it's related to HR, related to business even, right? Where people are struggling to fill roles and get enough people, companies are starting to figure out like, okay, how are we going to do this? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a really interesting time. It'll be interesting, looking back someday to really understand kind of what just happened, and how we're all going to change how we do things.
Yeah, absolutely. This last one, multiple offers, which I know we touched on, and I just wanted to say a little something. I get this question a lot, okay, now I have, let's call it 3-4 offers in hand. How do I decide what's best? And I always say the same thing to every client at every level, any industry. Go back to your original motivating factors. So when you got that recruiting call and you decided to answer it and you called the company back or you took the interview, what was your motivating factor? When the second call came in, what was your motivating factor? To Julie's point, was it salary? Was it just that it was, the salary was in an increase, or maybe you gained some equity or whatnot? And then I always ask clients as well, are you running away from something or to something? I'm never a big fan or proponent of anyone just running away. I always want there to be an opportunity that you're going to. So I think with multiple offers, which again, I'm in so many conversations about now, go back to those motivating factors. What motivated you to return the call? And then the other thing I ask a lot too is, after the interviews, do you feel energized and fired up and excited? Or do you feel like you really have to discern and go back to pros and cons and really think through it? I think it says so much. I always say it's like when you go to, you're buying a house and you walk into a house and you leave and you're already picturing where your couch goes and your end table goes, as opposed to maybe you leave and you're not sure. I think a job can feel kind of similar. It can provide, an interview can provide similar energy. So, with multiple offers, I think it's just important, as the market is still so hot and people are really considering multiple opportunities, to kind of go back to basics and say, why did I take on all these conversations and why am I interviewing with 3 companies? Julie, anything you wanted to add to that? I know you talked about multiple offers before.
Yes, so I agree, Julie, with your advice to your clients and to the participants on today's call. Really go back to where's your passion, where's your energy, because that's where you're going to be happiest. And I also like the advice. What was the motivating factor? Which leads me to one of the bullet points I want to add, which is, because of the technology and because of barriers to entry into the interview process. There's a lot of people out there interviewing, and some of them are serious, some of them are not. So today's climate can lead to some false positives, and that's just something we need to be mindful of. So we do like to hear words around why. I love to hear why ANSYS, of course. Why do you want to come to ANSYS? Or why we're at whatever company you're going to. It's just, that needs to be really compelling and convincing and genuine and authentic. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think this virtual environment makes it really easy to test the waters, right? And testing the waters and really actively, purposely interviewing, very different things. So
that's right.
Andrea, anything that you wanted to add to this?
No, I would just underline the passion, having that, with all things being equal, obviously, passion is really important. I think, you're usually passionate about something. It tends to be an area you're strong in, and that helps you, I think, be successful and happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll move on to the next slide, and where the return to office. So return to office certainly embedded somewhat in the slide that we just talked about. It's a current market trend. It's happening. As we just said, it's sort of happening in some places, very much so happening in others, and kind of pushed off and not sure if it's happening or not, in other industries. As I said before, I don't think I don't have any clients of my own who are doing any kind of 5-day a week. I have one manufacturing client who has never gone home. And then obviously the medical industry, the obvious industries that certainly never went remote. But I think this is, all of these are kind of still gray areas. Like, what's the answer? And certainly we are all living through this. The first one being, I would say through the summer, most of my clients were suggesting kind of a July, August. One was September back to the office hybrid. And they put together like a 3-page document, and it outlined the structure, and it said, hey, these are the departments that are going to be in Monday, Wednesday, Friday. These are the departments that are Tuesday, Thursday. One company actually had hired so many people through COVID that they didn't have enough desk space. So they were doing some hoteling type of situations. And then, things changed a little bit. And quite frankly, they had some turnover because they had employees who said, well, I don't actually want to go in 3 days a week. So I'm going to take this recruiting call and I'm going to interview with these companies because I don't want to go back to the office. So this hybrid piece is certainly something that I'm talking about it from the perspective that it's structured by the company. So it's an actual policy, so to speak, that's rolled out to employees and says this is kind of what the setup is. Andrea, have you seen, just in whether it's with Eightfold, or what have you seen as far as hybrid setups?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we were talking about earlier, I think most of the companies that we work with are moving, in that direction. Definitely, Eightfold is a different type of company. In Silicon Valley, we definitely have a lot more virtual work, and then small crew kind of in the headquarters office. But when I look at the larger companies, I'm definitely seeing a lot more hybrid structures. And as you said, their industries, I would add, the investment banking, financial services industries, a lot of them, like the Goldman's, Morgan Stanley's, Citi, they've already made these statements. They're definitely bringing their employees back into the office. So there are definitely some exceptions to that. And I think that causes some of the movement, that we talked about. Absolutely.
This next one, I've been asked this a lot by leaders who I'm working with, senior leaders, trying to drive companies toward what's right here. I've been asked this a lot. Are we giving employees too much control, right? Are we saying, okay, I just implemented this hybrid structure. I'm saying as of September 1, this is when you're coming back. And now I've had 5 people resign. And it's 5 key engineers, for example, and I can't afford to lose 2 more. And so time out, come back. You don't have to go in Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We can work together. Let's figure something out. Or maybe me setting up what the structure is not how this should work. I have a client who I'm doing some training with their managers in December. They're rolling out a work from home policy as of January 1. And I am putting managers through training as to how to manage that and how to handle it. And they're going to handle it case by case. Julie, can you speak at all to this? Just again, what you've seen at ANSYS or what your thought is around this?
So a couple things on this. So first, I believe, like all things in life, there's kind of this pendulum that just goes back and forth. And I think the pendulum has swung really far in one direction. Right now, I do think, months from now, we'll get to some other kind of steady state that looks a little bit different from where we are now. But we have, so we've done everything that you've said, Julie. We've offered 3 work models. We've equipped our managers to manage their employees within these work models. Overriding all of this is strong performance management, which drives accountability. So, at the end of the day, it's about points on the board, regardless of where you work, and that's important to us as a business. So, all of those elements kind of come to play in this conversation. But the genie's out of the bottle. We will not be able to unsee what we've seen over the last 18 months, and we're working to embrace it. That said, there are certain functions that are not possible to be managed remotely, like our office services team, and other teams that we have. But a lot of our work, we have a lot of knowledge workers, so a lot of our work is remote. An important caveat to this is that we are seeing some very strong cultural differences across the globe. Asia Pacific is our offices in Tokyo and Shanghai and Pune are almost all back 4-ish days a week. EMEA is our offices across the European continent are kind of a mix, and then the US is still largely remote. And it's also important to note another dynamic here is, we do have a large government business, so we have had to comply with the vaccine mandate. And so that has had an impact on all of this conversation.
Yeah.
Those are all
it's
great.
Been a fascinating. For anybody, it's a fascinating time to be in human resources.
Right, totally, right. Julie, can I just add one thing? Really interesting conversation I had earlier this week, and it was in a roundtable where I had a lot of Fortune 500 company leaders sitting there talking about time and role. So Julie Murphy, this was like fascinating because there was like the whole range was represented about time and role, because people are wanting to move, or actually what I learned talking to this group, some people felt like, why establish time and role? Let people, be adults and move, and progress their career as they see that they're able to. And then others were like, well, we have business objectives and requirements that we need people to be enrolled a certain amount of time. We don't want them to arbitrage to kind of, try to drive up their salary by, engaging two different leaders to bid on them and that type of thing. So it was really fascinating discussion. One of the things that came out of it, somebody said that they're seeing differences in perspectives of Gen Xers are like more about like, okay, I'll stay in my role longer. I'd like to kind of build my security and my knowledge. And it's the kind of younger workers, Gen Y, that are basically wanting to move more and wanting to kind of build their skill sets very quickly. I think there was also an opinion that said right now in a high demand environment that works well. But when things, if anything starts to contract, you're going to want more security, and that might change very quickly. So it's just a really interesting discussion and dialogue about that, about the differences generationally. And I'm guessing, Julie Murphy, if you probably are seeing very different things too by the different regions of the world. So just really interesting times, as you said, for an HR leader, trying to really figure out what are the principles our company is going to operate in that makes the most sense for business and also for our people. Just a fascinating time.
It is fascinating. Yep.
Yeah, I would say, I just a couple of months ago I guess it was about 5 managers through, we ended up doing kind of more of a discussion group around retention of millennials. And the reason being just that they really, they were feeling as though there was this overall writing need for work-life balance. So regardless of what I'm offering them, how can I do both? How can I hold them accountable and require X, Y, and Z, yet kind of give them this flexibility and work-life balance? So that's been, just generationally a topic that's been out there a number of times. Yeah. And again, flexibility maybe being a part of that. Yeah. So then we're going on to this kind of comparing the employee-driven arrangements, which is what we're talking about, And again, I'm thinking of my client who's rolling this policy out as of January 1, and it is going to be a case-by-case basis. You have to meet minimum requirements, and then you fill out a form and you meet with your manager, and ultimately HR makes the decision to, are we going to agree what you're asking us for? They have certain days that if you are going to work from home, it's only those days, and so on, versus company approval for these individual remote schedules. So are we, how do you feel about, kind of company policy rolled out versus let's just wait and see who would like to do what, and let's put something in place for what are the parameters that we're considering when someone is requesting a remote type, situation. Julie, do you want to speak to that?
Yep. So we've landed for now somewhere in between, where we are we're encouraging individual work teams, managers of teams to do what they should be doing, is managing their teams. So so intact work teams led by their managers are establishing their work routine within the context of these 3 models that we have set up. So 100% remote, flex or hybrid, and then on-premise, which is 4-ish days a week. And that's kind of the universe of options. And we're allowing managers, because we have like lots of vastly different work. We have some work that's very much grounded in the semiconductor business, and that requires a different level of engagement and teamwork and convergence on good software design, versus a mechanical business that's much more kind of cyclical because it's tied to the federal aerospace and defense cycles. So one size definitely does not fit all. But we do have some guide rails set up to help our managers manage their teams. And then we've layered on top of that just good leadership and skill building and some technology. We don't have a form. We do it all online. HR doesn't approve. Managers approve. So that's just a bit of a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. I'm in the world. My bias is yes. And that's a little bit, I didn't start off in HR. I actually, the beginning of my career, thought HR, when I was not in HR, I thought HR was just an office of people that said no a lot. And then I got it. Then I had a rotational assignment. I fell in love, and I've been doing it ever since, because it can be such a powerful, good HR can be such a powerful tool to help businesses succeed: talent, leadership, organizational culture, organization structure. So I'm all about giving tools and resources and empowerment to leaders within confines to manage their teams appropriately. So long answer. I hope that does that answer your question, Julie?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It just gives some good insight, I think, from what you're seeing. Also, we do have a question, an attendee question. It says, and maybe Andrea, you can take this if you'd like. It says, what would a recommendation be to a senior management team that is resistant to offering a hybrid work environment and is practicing the wait and see what happens after bonus time approach?
Yeah, that doesn't sound very proactive. And so, unfortunately, I think the one thing I want to point out to Julie's point, that the role of HR has changed dramatically just in the past 5 years. So that sounds like the more traditional, maybe HR approach, which is really around managing the relationships, maybe saying no, helping address issues that came up, versus, and I don't mean to sweep, broad brush all of HR, but I think just generally, and HR is finding itself in a role now of trying to figure out proactively, like, how do we actually create the environment and culture, we want. So it sounds like, in that situation, it just may be that there just needs to be a shift in the thinking of leaders. I think that's interesting, because they must be seeing the risks of that real time right now with attrition, right, of satisfaction surveys, because the rest of the world is moving in that direction. I mean, I feel like just referencing maybe some of that data that matters to HR is probably a good thing to do, to point out, like, this is kind of directionally things are heading, need to kind of change an approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I would add too that I think, as much as we saw how seamlessly we all back in March of 2020 went remote and just, kept flying, so to speak, and kept going and kept doing what we were doing, I think this shift going back, whatever it ends up looking like, is certainly going to be a little more dicey, right? It's not going to be as simple as it was to just everybody pick up their computers and go home and dial in, and here we are, we're all remote. Because I think now we've felt the flexibility, and we've lived it. So a little bit different going backward. I think we have another question here. Why are we still discussing where the teams and individuals are versus solely talking about output and ways of working after we've pretty much proven that we can work from anywhere? It's a really great question. Julie, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you're absolutely right. It is about outcomes and managing those outcomes. So, and so kind of related to the question that Andrea just answered, for the person who's in the situation where, or for any of you who are in the situation of, we expect people to come back to the office. Is there going to be a watershed event, like a bonus payout, a vest, a fine that's going to, it's going to be the difference? I would just tell you, keep your hand on the pulse of the data, because I think that the data is going to bear out. There are more options than ever now for employees, and the data will bear out the reaction over time. So, I agree. We don't spend as much time at all talking about the new work configuration as much as we're spending on results and performance and accountability, and ensuring that we've got the right talent in the right place at the right time.
Absolutely. Andrea, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think, Julie, that's exactly right. If, the numbers will bear out whether it's attrition or satisfaction. I think what I'd say, though, to the audience is it's just going to take a minute for organizations to adjust to this and really try to figure it out. And definitely the voices, of employees matter a lot, and your opinions matter a lot. So definitely, I think, express them. But I think large organizations are trying to figure this out. It was only a year ago we were all, it's amazing the time period this has all happened. And so companies are trying to figure this out, and it's big change for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree with you, though. I think everybody will adjust appropriately. And, who knows, a month from now, 2 months, 3 months, we'll be in a different position than we are now, as we've proven.
Yeah, I agree, Julie. Thornton, you mentioned we can all dial back to March of 2020, when, if you would have said to my CEO within a weekend, your entire workforce is going to be working remotely, there would be no way. I wouldn't have believed it. You just, it's just, right. It was preposterous. You just could not imagine it. But there we were.
Right. We've got, this says pre-pandemic, we see recruiters looking for very specific skills and experience that relates to the job opening. With the current mismatch and competition in the market, are we seeing companies being more open to candidates from different roles and backgrounds? Mm-hmm. If yes, how has that changed the interview process, if at all? Andrea, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I'll talk about it specifically as it pertains to what we're seeing, how our tool is being used. One of the things that April provides a solution that gives detailed insights on skills. We have true AI with half the world's workforce of data on skills and jobs and geographies and companies. And so we have a lot of intelligence. And one of the things that we're seeing our customers leverage a lot is something we call skill adjacencies. So skill adjacencies are basically what we see in terms of skills that basically predict with 95% accuracy the likelihood of someone to learn another skill. Mm. So we see movement of people through skills. And so what we're seeing a lot of our customers leverage is skill adjacencies, right? To look at people who have the potential to, right now there's so much competition, obviously, for, software engineers, with this move to digital, data scientists, and a lot of specific needs that people have. And so we're just looking at kind of broadening the skill set and broadening the population by looking at that potential, and even honing in on skills in general opens up your aperture, to really consider people from different backgrounds, maybe different industries, to really hone in on kind of their skills. So we're definitely seeing that come in, play a really strong role for a lot of our customers right now.
Yeah, Julie, did you want to add anything?
I would just agree wholeheartedly with what Andrea just said. Yeah. Okay.
The next question is, and Julie, maybe you want to take this, any legal concern to rejecting a request to work from home?
Well, there can be, there are, I'll just answer it like a good lawyer would answer it. Well, it depends. So yeah, there can be. Yeah,
there can be.
I mean, it's a complicated, it's a complicated topic, especially with this vaccine mandate in place, because religious exemptions and medical exemptions actually do require employees that one of the common accommodations is to have them continue to work from home. So, and then that gets into the flip side of that issue, which is, what if those employees want to be working in the office? How do we handle that? So yeah, this is a potentially complicated space. So yeah, always having good legal counsel by your side is an important facet to this whole landscape, whether it's internal counsel or just good external. I don't know if your company is big enough to have an internal counsel team, that's terrific, especially local counsel. If you're dealing in APAC or especially EMEA, I mean, there's just lots and lots of subtleties and nuances across the globe on this topic. But if you can't, if you're not big enough to have a strong internal counsel, relying on external counsel is always a good thing to do in these situations.
Yeah, I would agree. Good advice. Andrea, anything to add to that?
No, I'm glad Julie answered that. You answered that well, Julie. But that's exactly right. I think it depends.
We have a question that just what would your advice be as to how to navigate the return to job market after 10 years of staying at home? I'm going to definitely let the two of you answer this. I mean, as a career coach, I work in this space quite a bit. I actually spent quite a bit of time in 2020 talking to, I gained quite a few new clients of females, stay-at-home moms who were re-entering the workforce and had, a full professional working world before that. And so I did a lot of, coaching some moms back into that. Julie, do you have anything to add to 10 years? We've got about 4 minutes left here, but
my two words, own it.
Right.
Just put it out there, claim it, put it on your resume, say you took 10 years off to focus on other things, manage other very important projects in your life. And you can even I'm making it sound, you should frame that up as, hey, here are the problems that I saw. Here's the things that I did, whether it was organizing a PTA fundraiser or establishing an initiative that addressed a specific need in your community. Those are all excellent skills. You may not have gotten paid for them, but you probably got terrific results, and you can talk about that. So own it, put it out there, don't hide it. It's very understandable and appreciated. And again, focus on what you accomplished in that time off, and don't be afraid to dust off and shine up that pre-break experience. It may have been 10, 15 years ago, but to Andrea's point, there's some great skill adjacencies in there that are really relevant to today's job market needs.
Absolutely. Andrea, you want to take a minute and add to that at all?
I just want to say, companies understand kind of the power and value of, these return to work employees. And I've seen some companies actually establish programs to help really engage, that segment. So as Julie Murphy said, own it, because I think that's very much respected and appreciated these days, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. Own it, absolutely, and talk about all the great things that you did while you were out, because it really wasn't out. You were just owning something else, right? That you're still owning, by the way.
Yeah, that's actually, you never disown for the rest of your life.
Right, exactly. I think we've got a couple minutes left. John, I think, wanted to join us back here and kind of wrap up. This has been really great. It's been awesome having the two of you here with me. And like I said, I'm usually kind of staring at my own screen and talking to myself. So how fun to have a discussion, and such a relevant topic. I like how Julie said she's living the bullet. And I think we're living through all of those topics. We're living through them. So this has been really great. John, did you want to say something?
Yes. I want to thank Julie and Andrea for joining us today. What a great opportunity to have them all with us to speak, and want to thank them for that. I've had the opportunity to connect with them earlier in other panels and other events. So great to have you with us. So thank you for it. Thought maybe just a last word of encouragement to our alumni community out there, some who are looking for an opportunity, some who are looking for an opportunity to change careers or things, and might want some advice from all of you.
I'll go first. I always start with just know your brand. Have a brand, know what you're looking for, know who you are before you start to try to reach out and make a transition. Really, really hard to network and interview and go about the process without having a firm brand. So that's key. And if you don't have one, obviously working with a coach or a mentor certainly helps kind of formulate that. Julie?
Find your passion, find something you truly enjoy, and you'll never work a day in your life.
There you go. Andrea?
Having just gone through this, and as I said, Julie, I could have talked to you like a year ago. I just made a dramatic change, and I feel like it's really about knowing what you want. You know, what is it that you want in your career at this stage of your life, and being clear on that. So as Julie Thornton said earlier, running to something versus away from something is, I think, really critical. And I feel like I've been able to do that. I feel very fortunate to have been able to do that, make a big change, and really love what I'm doing.
That's great. Well, thanks everyone for coming, and thank you for all your great questions. They really certainly sparked some great additional conversation. Thank you all.